Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today's going to be the update to the Off Balance Templar build for the Blackwood Chapter. Now this of course has been on the channel for a very long time, but the initial design is still here. It is supposed to put out really good area of effect damage, really good single target damage, both at the same time. It's not just single or just AoE, it's a combination of the two. At the same time, you supply a very beneficial bonus to the group in the terms of off balance, and that will allow them to get 70% more damage from their heavy attacks and double resources back if they choose to use them. Not only that, we've got our own sustain and stupid survivability as well, so if you want to see more of this, stay tuned, it's all coming up. So, first of all, let's go into the stats, get our buffs and bonuses on. On our own, we're sitting on 37.4k max Magicka, 23.8k max health, and 14.7k max stamina, with 1k recovery, almost 5k spell damage, and 54% crit chance, with a really healthy 22.9k spell resistance and 15.1k physical. We are using the Thief Munderstone with flat Magicka bonuses all the way up to 64 points in our attributes, and we're using flat magic and health food. That will give you not far short of 5k for each resource. If you want to use the recovery stuff, that's entirely up to you, but bear in mind you will lose your health, so you'll go down to about 20k, which is quite painful, and that's when you're buffed. If you're unbuffed, you're going to go to about 18. Really risky, I wouldn't recommend it, but just for argument's sake, if you want to see what sort of buffs and bonuses you can get, well, the trial dummy is here, by the way, so a few buffs from classes and such. 40k Magicka, 26k health, way over 6k spell damage and rise, and it will go really high, plus 60% crit chance. So once you've got your buffs from your group, you can really see the difference, but of course on your own you're still in a really good place. Now, we're going to go through all the skills in detail, explain where they come from, what to morph them to, and how to use them. But, of course, if you want to skip this part, it's entirely up to you. Just bear in mind there's usually a lot of information in here. So, first off is Purifying Light. This is in the Dawn's Wrath skill line. Third ability you unlock starts off as Backlash, morph it to Purifying Light. Very simple. This applies to the target and sits there for 6 seconds. While it's on the target, it will actually calculate damage that the target has taken. Then it will release 20% of the damage done, which can crit as well, in a direct attack. Single pop, basically. Now, this is capped, but of course, damage bonuses do apply. And when it's finished, there'll be a 6-second heal over time on the ground surrounding the target that you just applied this to. Now, you want to keep this up as much as possible. We are going to use it once every rotation, but regardless, just make sure it's on something, because even if it doesn't do a lot of damage at the time, that heal is really useful. Now, Barb Trap is up next. It's in a Fighters Guild skill line. You will need Fighters Guild to be leveled really far to get this. You actually need Trap, Beast, and morph it to Barbed Trap. Now, yes, of course, you could use a magical version of Minor Force, or you could take a synergy from your group, but for us, this actually does benefit us because we do have a decent amount of physical damage anyway. This also has a bleed on it, so it does damage to the target initially, then does bleed damage, which can proc the status effect as well for hemorrhage, and all the time that this is active, or all the time that you have the buff from this, rather, for 18 seconds, you will get Minor Force, increasing all crit damage done by 10%. Don't let this run out. You don't need it on every single target, you just need it to be running. Next up is our Jesus Beam. This is in our Dawn's Wrath skill line. Last ability you unlock starts off as Radiant Destruction. Morph it to one of two things: Radiant Oppression or Radiant Glory. If you are squishy squish, then Radiant Glory is better for you because you're going to heal from all the damage that you do. Yes, you get a 20% heal per tick of the damage done. And this one instead doesn't do that. This one will give you more damage based on the amount of Magicka you have left in your bar. So if you are one of those people that has no Magicka left to execute, get Glory, it'll do the same amount of damage and you'll heal. If you have loads of Magicka left to execute, maybe you're on top of your sustain, or maybe you've been hiding behind other people not casting stuff, who knows. Either way, this will do a little bit more. So it's entirely up to you. Both of them basically the same application. They do damage over 1.8 seconds and in 4 ticks, I believe, and it's magic damage, and it will get aggressive the lower the health of the target. Just bear in mind, of course, it does say there's a 50% health and under kind of checkpoint as to when it gets stronger. That is true, but it's very low at that phase. So what you want to do is aim for a little bit lower. So if it's an ad pull and there's some big trash enemies, then of course you want to hit them about 40 to 30%. If it's on a boss, you want to aim for around 30 to 25% before you start using it. Inside your rotations, you'll basically remove your spammable that you're using and replace this instead. And our next spammable is up. Puncture and Sweeps. This is in Adric's Spear skill line. This is such a hard thing to say all at once. Adric's Spear skill line, first ability to unlock, starts off as Puncture and Strikes, morph it to Puncture and Sweeps. Say that 10 times in a row really, really fast. I bet you can't. Anyway, this is very simple. It will jab multiple times over a period of 1 second, and everything in front of you will get hit by each individual hit. Now, the closest target to you, the one directly in front, will of course take the most damage, and all the rest of the enemies will take a bit less. But every single hit will heal you for 40% of the total damage done. So every single enemy that gets hit, you get 40% heal off of each one. Very, very strong indeed. So your Execute can heal if you pick Glory instead of Oppression, and your spammable heals anyway, plus your direct damage hit that then accumulates damage and pops also heals you. So everything here can heal you. Now, the last ability on this bar before the ultimate is actually Inner Light. This is not an active skill. We just leave it on the bar. So go to Mage's Guild. You need Mage's Guild 2 to unlock this, and it starts off as Inner Light. Sorry, it starts off as Mage Light, morph to Inner Light. Sits on your bar, gives you a crit bonus. If you've got potions, you've got that anyway. But you do get 5% max magicka for it being there. The ultimate is double barred, but you can change this if you want. So we'll come to the other ultimate later, but you want Shooting Star from the Mage's Guild if you can get it. It takes Mage's Guild 10 to get it, by the way. Starts off as Meteor, morph it to Shooting Star. Big comet flies out the sky, smashes everything in front of it, and of course does damage over time on the ground after it's finished. It does a stun as well. Be careful in some mechanics if the tank is pulling stuff, don't go on Meteor or something they need to pull in. Also, the more targets you hit, the better, because every single one you hit, you'll get 12 ultimate back. That used to have a cap a long time ago, no longer does. If your tanks are really good at stacking stuff, firing a comet, and then loads of resources back, you can borderline spam it in some situations. But if you don't have Shooting Star, do not panic right now. You can, of course, go into Dawn's Wrath. You can get Nova and morph it to Solar Prism. That will actually do a healthy amount of damage on the ground in area of effect, and it will protect your group as well. So the choice is yours, but for flat stats, of course, this does have passives, and Shooting Star is really, really nice, and can be built up quite quickly. But it's up to you. Back bar. Inner Light on both bars unless you feel really squishy. If you do feel really, really squishy, then of course you can go into Light Armor and you can get Annulment and morph it into whichever one of these two damage shields you prefer. One is slightly stronger, the other one recovers Magicka if you get hit with magic abilities. You probably want to go with this one because the stronger the better, right? We're using all Light Armor anyway. But Inner Light for the bonus on both bars, or Damage Shield if you feel squishy. Unstable Wall of Storms. This is very important. We are using 2 different versions depending on your group. So, technically, Wall of Elements morph to Unstable Wall of Elements. And because we're using a Lightning Staff, it will do shock damage. Every single target caught inside of this will take shock damage every 1 second. If you apply the Concussion status effect, then of course they will receive Minor Vulnerability, meaning you and your group will do 5% more damage to them. And you will also knock them off balance. When something gets knocked off balance, you or your group, whoever hits them, will benefit from a stronger heavy attack. So during that time, if you heavy attack them, you'll have a 70% stronger heavy attack. So if you are built for heavy attack strength, this will enhance it. Also, any heavy attack, whether it's magic based or physical based, any heavy attack during that time will give you back double resources, which is really, really handy. If you're using the Easy Sork on my channel, obviously this helps, although it applies off balance anyway. If you're using anything else like a tank and you're low on resources, in any situation that can benefit your group. If people assume off balance is useless, well, they obviously don't want double resources back when they do need to heavy attack. It's a really good bonus to have there just in case you need it. And there are many builds on my channel that do utilize it a lot. However, if you already have off balance covered and you don't need it because someone else is already doing it, that's when you can change this to a flame staff, and instead it will do fire damage over time instead of lightning. The damage output is the same unless they are burning, in which case they'll get a 20% increase to this skill per tick if they're on fire. And of course, if you've got a Dragon Knight in your group or someone's using Encratis, then of course the fire damage can be enhanced. If you don't have them around and you don't apply bonus status effect, the damage is the same. But the choice is yours, it depends on your group setup. Next is Solar Barrage. This is in our Dawn's Wrath skill line. Again, we've got loads in here. This is the second ability to unlock. Starts off as Solar Flare, morph it to Solar Barrage. This you activate and it does damage in area of effect every 2 seconds. Magic damage, in fact. And it also grants you Empower. Every single time this applies, Empower is given to you. It's really, really stupid. It will stay throughout the duration of the actual skill, but it will increase your light and heavy attack damage by 40%. Yes, of course, if you've got Galloway in your group and it's very, very active and you've got it all the time, you won't necessarily need that bonus, in which case you want to swap out to Ritual of Retribution. This can get expensive, so be careful, but this will do more damage if you already have Empower covered. If you don't already have Empower covered, have this, because then your light and heavy attacks will be buffed and then it will actually level it out. So, in a group you don't have Galloway, apply this. Lights and heavies are stronger. In a group you do have Galloway, use this. This damage over time plus the buff you're getting already will slightly outperform it. It's entirely up to you which way you go, but pay attention to how your group is set up before you really make that decision. Channeled Focus is next. It's in a Restore and Light skill line. Last ability to unlock. This got buffed to crap. Basically, this used to be the only ability in the game that could buff Major Resolve. It was its own version of it. They removed that, so it sounds like a nerf, right? No, they made it even stronger because now you survive even more because it heals you. Put this on the ground. Every 1 second throughout the 25-second period, you will have Major Resolve, increasing your physical and spell resistances, and every single 1 second you'll get back 242 Magicka. As you saw on our stat sheet, we had relatively so-so recovery. Well, this goes on top of it and doesn't show in the stats. Recovery's calculated every 2 seconds, so technically we have 484 extra recovery because of this skill if you actively use it. It's ridiculous. And for standing inside of it, you heal every 1 second, and this can scale off of your max health. So the higher the health, the bigger the heal, meaning if you've got buffs and bonuses from your group, say Eben and minor toughness from a Warden maybe, and if you use the flat food, not the recovery food, you buff your health even more, which means this is stronger. And yes, it can crit. Stupidly powerful. Keep this up if you can. Some situations you might not need to because your resources are good, you're not taking much damage, but if you are and you can actively maintain this, it's very, very strong. Blazing Spear, of course, is in our Adric Spear skill line. Last ability on this bar, apart from the ultimate. And this is the 4th one in the skill line itself. Starts off as Spear Shards, morph it to Blazing Spear. Very simply put, fire this, it'll land on the ground and do magic damage to all enemies caught inside of it. And then it'll do magic damage every 1 second for 10 seconds. Also, if anyone picks this up, they will take the synergy bonus from Undaunted, of course, if they've got that already, with 4% back for taking a synergy, but on top of it, they'll get this, which is 3960 Magicka or Stamina, whichever one of their 2 bars is higher. So while you've got this in your rotation, every 10 seconds, someone is going to gain from this. Now, the ultimate is double barred for stats, but if you want to use a different ultimate on this bar, you can, and what I would recommend is Elemental Rage from the Destruction Staff skill line. Make sure you get Rage, not the other one, because the other one has less damage and sticks to you, whereas this one can be cast on the ground at range. This does stupid amount of damage over a very short period of time. If it's lightning, it lasts 2 seconds longer and can concuss, yes, so if you're trying to apply off balance, that will cover it, or help towards it. But if you have the fire version, it has less time but more damage per tick. So whichever one is up to you, depends, like I said earlier, on your group. We have built this overall to consider your group composition. It's not just a single target dummy smasher. Composition is key. Now, passives. Nice and simple. Increased crit damage with an Adric Spear ability slotted. We've got one on both bars. We've actually got the Jabby Jab Jabs and we've got the Spear on the back. So that's covered. Crit damage all the time, and you increase your damage done to blocking targets. Gain minor protection for 6 seconds, reducing damage taken by 5% when you cast an Adric Spear ability. So if you activate this, 6 seconds worth of minor protection, and if you activate this, same applies. So we have 100% uptime on that reduction to damage bonus. When you deal damage with an Adric Spear ability 4 times in rapid succession, you deal magic damage or physical, depending on which one is higher. So 4 ticks from this or 4 ticks from this, whichever lands first. You can have that running all the time. It's very strong. Did get reduced a little bit over time, but it's still a very valid passive. It's just free damage. And this increases weapon damage by 6% and spell resistance by 2640. So our weapon damage is actually up, which is going to help because we are using physical damage with our light attacks and with our beast trap. So definitely get that passive. Of course, if you wanted to, you can go lightning staff on the front, but we'll come to that later. Next up is, of course, Dawn's Wrath. Increases the duration of your Sunfire Eclipse, and Solar Flare. So you're going to want that for Solar Barrage, and you might want it for your ultimate as well, depending on whether you're using it or not. Every time you cast a Dawn's Wrath ability, as long as it was within 6 seconds minimum of the last one, you'll get 3 ultimate. If you could do it faster than that, then you won't. But this is on the front bar, this is on the back bar. We are going to consistently have that bonus. And at Execute, we're going to have Radiant Oppression or Glory. So we're going to keep that all the time. Constantly build an ultimate. Very handy indeed. You increase your group's spell damage by 10% if you use a Dawn's Wrath ability. And that will last 20 seconds. We're going to have that 100% uptime. And reduces the health, magicka, and stamina and ultimate costs of everything that you use by 5%. Restoring Light is actually quite important. Increases the healing effects from your Restoring Light abilities. Before, we didn't really have any healing abilities in previous patches, but this now heals, so get this. While standing in your own rune focus, which is basically this, or any of the other abilities listed here, then you will have Minor Mending, which increases your healing done by 8%, but if you leave the area, you still maintain that buff for a further 4 seconds. Once that's gone, of course, you need to either recast it or come back into it and you can get it again. Also increases the amount of damage you can block, so while you're inside of it or while you're out of it for 4 seconds. When you heal an ally under 50% health with a Restoring Light ability, you grant them 2 ultimate. So if you are low health and you heal from this, ulti regen. And also, your resurrection speed is stupidly fast. You have a chance not to use a soul gem, people come back with more health, and you res 20% faster than anybody else. There's even champion point passives to make that even stronger. Now, you are going to want dual wield passives. We aren't using any skills, but we are using lights and heavies, and they do count as abilities. So you're going to want this to increase the damage when they're low health. You're going to want this to increase the weapon and spell damage of your offhand weapon. For definitely want that. This is not important, so dump that one. This will increase your damage versus CC'd enemies with your light and heavies. And this will, of course, increase our crit chance per dagger, which is the whole point of us having them in the first place. If you want to use a lightning staff, then of course you are going to have the opportunity to have crit on there if you choose certain traits, but you won't have this bonus, so it's very different. You'll be a little bit less. Now, if you did choose to have a lightning staff on the front bar, this is also very relevant, but it's relevant nonetheless because we are using a Destro staff on the back. Just understand the passives and how they work. So, if you heavy attack with a lightning staff, you will do splash damage to all nearby targets. The equivalent flat damage that you do, with all buffs and bonuses considered, but no crits, the maximum damage that you'll do with that heavy, even in off balance, that is what will be copied to surrounding targets. So on your front bar, this is actually very helpful, or on the back if you need to in emergency situations. And you have higher penetration with your Destro staff abilities, so light attacks, heavy attack, and your wall of elements. So that won't carry over, so it's only while you're on your back bar, unless you use a lightning staff on the front as well, which you can. This increases your chance to apply elemental status effects. Now, status effects all have their own bonuses and such, and also their own chance depending on the type of skill or proc. That is actually in the help tutorial elemental status effects in-game if you want to see the actual stats for that. They're very low, but glyphs are quite high. Now, if you have a Destro staff held at the moment, so you're on your back bar, or you're on your front bar if you have a Destro staff, you will get this bonus. If you have dual wield present, and you're holding the dual wield at the time, you will not get this bonus, so it's harder to apply the status. However, there are champion points to cover that, and you can use certain glyphs to make it a little bit stronger. We'll come to that a bit later when we get to the gear. And also, if you have a lightning staff equipped, all area of effect damage skills, anything that is labeled as area of effect, its base damage is increased by 8%. So it's not, oh, if we have more targets, the AoE does more damage per skill. Yes, of course, you're going to hit more targets, but no. At the skill itself's base amount, regardless of how many enemies there are, that skill will be stronger. So Wall of Elements is area of effect. Your jabs is area of effect. Your spears is area of effect. They are now stronger if you have a lightning staff. If you have a flame staff, however, your single target stuff is stronger. So your Jesus beam, your light attacks, and your heavy. But your heavy from the lightning does splash and the flame one doesn't. So it's a trade-off. The reason we've got the lightning on the front or the dual wield on the front is for either crit or for AoE increase. Over time, it actually performed much, much better than a flame staff on the front, but the back bar, like I said, is a choice. If you've got off balance covered, go flame on the back. If you don't have off balance covered, go lightning on the back. Just bear in mind, of course, if you do have flame on the back and do flame wall of elements, yes, it's stronger. But if you have lightning on the front, once you swap to the front, you're now benefiting from the AoE bonus from the stronger flame one buffed by the lightning, if that made any sense whatsoever. Anyway, if you kill an enemy with a Destro staff ability, you get magic back, and of course there's a frost bonus there, but we're not using that, so ignore the damage shield one. Now, light armor, of course, you can go through these in your own time as far as the bonuses and penalties are concerned. They are set in stone either way. They are based on how many pieces you have, of course, so you don't have to spend points for these. These you do, however. Effectiveness versus snares and sprint reduction to cost. Magical recovery and reduction to cost for magical abilities. Increased resistance for spell, increased crit for spell, and increased spell pen as well. All very, very helpful. And you are going to need these. Fighters Guild, of course, we are using the Barbed Trap, so you are going to want Intimidating Presence. You're also going to want Slayer, which increases your weapon damage, because we are using Dual Wield if you choose to, but either way, we're still using the Beast Trap anyway. You get Ultimate for kills while being on this bar, and this increases the damage of your Beast Trap if you affect Undead, Daedra, or Werewolves with them. Mage's Guild is not massively important if you don't want to go for Shooting Star, but even if you do along the way, you want to make sure that you get this. This will give you 2% extra Magicka and recovery for each Fighter's Guild ability on the bar. The rest of them you can get in your own time, of course, but that's the one you really want to aim for. Undaunted, of course, if you take a synergy, you get 4% resources back. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand how that works. And of course, if you have different types of armor worn, you will get 2% max resources increased for each type. We're actually going to use them one on purpose. If you want to use more, so you can use a heavy piece and a medium, it's entirely up to you, but just bear in mind you will lose light passives and you will sacrifice your crit, pen, and recovery. We are, of course, a Dark Elf. We have Magicka and Stamina, whereas most races have one or the other. And we have weapon damage and spell damage. Same applies there. Most have one or the other. We've got both. We also have resistance to fire. So while we're using Dual Wield and Destro, we get magic and stamina and weapons damage and spell damage. We've got the best of both worlds for everything. And of course, get medicinal use. This is the most important passive in the game, in my opinion. Your potions are consumable buffs. Do not let your buffs run out. Do not let your potions run out. This will allow you to have full uptime on them with a 45-second cooldown and a 47-second uptime. So there should be no excuses for running low if you are using your potions properly and maintaining your rotation and resources. So now we're going to get to the gear. Just bear in mind, if you've used any setup like this before for the off-balance build in the past, it's still 100% fine. You don't have to change anything. But I'm going to explain how this all works, especially if you're new to this. So the front bar is either dual wield, daggers, or lightning staff. It's entirely up to you, whichever you preference, and whichever is easy for you. Bear in mind, up close, dual wield is obviously limited to range, and when you move backwards, you can't reach anymore unless you go to the back bar. Lightning staff, you can reach all the time. There is a higher crit bonus to having daggers, but there is a higher damage bonus to having the lightning staff, because the lightning staff increases all of your area of effect skills, whereas the daggers just increase your rate in which you could crit. If you are having a good day with a lightning staff, you could roll the same dice as your daggers, which means you'll have more damage. But it fluctuates. It's up to you. Anyway, we're still using Sororia on the front bar, because this does carry over to the back bar. Spell damage, minus Slayer, and 2 Magicka bonuses. But if you have the regular version from normal instead of vet, then of course you get 1 Magicka bonus. It's not the end of the world. There's barely anything in it. If you do direct damage and stay in the little circle of fire, you'll stack up to 520 spell damage. If you leave it too often or leave it for too long, you'll lose it and you have to build it up again. So the burst potential of this is not that much, but obviously the stack on bonuses is. The loss of it, if you move out of it, can be quite stressful. So make sure that you're paying attention to mechanics. Don't run around the room like a headless chicken, otherwise you'll never benefit for this and you might as well take it off. In that case, you want to be using something else, but I'm going to get to that in a moment. Now, the glyphs are very important, and this has been stress tested to hell, and this did actually get the most results out of it, both single target and area of effect. Lots of people like to put the weapon and spell damage glyph on the back bar. For some builds that does apply. For this one it doesn't. So flame and weapon and spell damage on the front. Yes, it's a lesser version of the glyph, but it did work out much higher because we had more uptime on our glyph on the back bar. It was just constantly spamming. So shock, lightning staff from Maelstrom, perfected or normal, doesn't make a difference, in infused with a shock glyph. If you are not using a lightning staff, because off balance is already covered, that's the only condition that this applies, then you can change it to a flame staff with a flame glyph, which means yes, this glyph needs to alter. You need to swap them around. Shock on the back, flame on the front, or shock on the front, flame on the back. If you're supplying off balance, you want shock on the back. If you're not, you can put it on the front, whichever. This one needs to always be the same though. Now if you're using a lightning staff on the front, this is the glyph you transfer over. So you make sure that instead of using the dagger with the weapon and spell damage glyph, you use the lightning staff with it instead. Which is here. Now, you can use 2 pieces on the front, which is the daggers or the lightning staff, and you can use 3 pieces on the jewelry, or if you can't get the jewelry, you can put it on the body instead. It's all light, it doesn't matter. Regardless of which set you've got on, the jewelry needs to be spell damage on all of them, with 2 bloodthirsty and 1 infused. The other set is overwhelming. This really needs to be on 100% of the time, because while Sororia carries over to the back bar and a Maelstrom carries over to the front, this doesn't actually proc anywhere where you want it apart from when you're hitting stuff. And if you have this on the front bar weapon, which is an option of course, you might actually fall into downtimes. It does have a 1-second gap, but sometimes you can have the downtime quite high if it doesn't fire when you swap to the back and then you're stuck with it. So this will deal damage if you do a class ability, and it will cause lightning damage in front of you, and it'll hit multiple targets up to 6. And every single second that it does damage, the damage done will be rewarded back to you in the form of magicka. So you're constantly sustaining, especially in big ad pulls. It's very, very handy indeed. Now this is scaled off of our max weapon damage or spell damage. As you saw earlier, our spell damage is actually way over 6k, so it's really, really handy. But this is our main ability to sustain while spamming stuff. If you don't have this set, you are going to struggle in some areas unless you've got lots of bonuses from your group. This particular setup is built a very unique way, and this does help a lot. Now, if you don't have access to the trial stuff, or you're too scared to get in there, or you just haven't had the chance to do so yet, you don't have to have Sororia. You can go with Skaven Mage, you can go with whatever you want, but another really good option to keep your resources as well, to keep the sustain, is of course to front bar this, which I wouldn't normally recommend, with a staff or 2 daggers, with your jewelry, and then just craft yourself this set here. This will enhance your glyphs, your traits rather, for your weapons by 100%. Meaning your front bar, if you had a lightning staff, you can actually get 14.4% crit chance out of it on precise. On the back bar, your infused trait is doubled in strength as well, so your glyph fires much faster and much stronger to keep your damage up and plug the gap that you lost from the lack of spell damage. There's lots of different things that you could use with this, but that actually works really, really well. So if you are a beginner to this, just go into Tempest Island and get overwhelming, and then craft yourself a set of this and you're good to go. Either way, it's up to you. The monster set, by the way, Xan is obviously very, very powerful. Really good crit bonus, which adds to our crit chance. And, of course, it does do really high damage in single target when it fires, but you have to stay close. If you have to move around in mechanics, it's going to break and you're going to lose it. Now, this does scale off weapon and spell damage, of course, the highest one of the 2, but it has a long cooldown. So if you are moving around in a very mobile fight, this might not be for you. Single target, yes, it performed about 3k more than the rest, but if you're using lots of AoE or you have to move around lots, these 3 are also very, very good. You've got the Jeff helmet, which is a flame and day drop, which everybody loves, of course. Valken Scoria meteors coming out of the sky, and you've got Alambris as well, which is actually both procs now, not one, so you get both flame and lightning damage at the same time, which, yes, can contribute to higher off balance when it procs concussion. Now, champion points, of course. These are going to be quite simple. So, I haven't even implemented all of these because there's no need. These light ones here are inevitable. You've got your damage resistance, you've got your flat stats, your heals, all that kind of stuff. They're inevitable. Low-end champion points, you're going to be able to max these out. But the most important ones are your slottables, these here. So you want this one for backstabber, more crit from behind. You want this one for more crit full stop. And then you want these 2. You want Thaumaturge for damage over time, and then you want Master at Arms for direct damage. Yes, your puncture and sweeps are direct. Yes, they are area of effect, but we're going to come to that in a minute. You need to unlock this first. 10 points in here will get these. Then max these out as soon as you can. Then you unlock this with 10 points into here, and you'll unlock these. Once you've got your slottables, you're pretty much done apart from your passives, which will come in time, and then you just need to decide what to do with your spare points once you get there. Now what you do there is you decide which extra slottables you'll want for swap out situations. And here's an example. If you can't get behind the target, or it's a dragon or something like that and you can't fight them from behind anyway, you don't want this. You want this instead. That will increase all of your area of effect damage, regardless of whether it crits or not, meaning you're in a better place than you would be if you had a duff slottable. And that's it. Aim for the 4 slottables that you want, get all your passives, and then buy the extras. Same goes for the red stuff. You want this one here, which increases your resource gain, because if you get kills, you get 1,500 magicka back, but you are going to have a path to get there. So you want 15 points into here, 10 here, and 10 here, and then you'll unlock it. These three over here are recovery, armor, and health, and they don't have any prerequisites at all. You can just get them straight away. So there's your 4 slottables there. The green stuff is very straightforward. This is 100% quality of life and isn't relevant to the build. But if you want to kind of lean towards what I would consider the most important in content, this here, obviously, you don't use your glyphs as often. They can actually be free occasionally, so you use less soul gems. So you want to path from here to here to here to get that. Once you're here, everything else that you would need is there as well. So treasure hunter, so you get higher quality loot from chests. This makes your food and drink last longer. This has a chance to not even use a potion even when you use it. And this makes you faster between fights, so when you're out of combat. The rest of them are mostly crafting and sneaking and all that kind of stuff. Those particular ones are actually probably the most useful in combat or content. But it's up to you. That tree actually doesn't matter. You can put no points in there at all and it won't affect you. Now, time for the rotation, which is quite simple. If you've seen it before, you already know it. Spear on the ground. Make sure your resistance buff is up if you need it. And make sure your beast trap is up if you need it. One sets down, light attack, soda barrage. Light attack, wall of elements, swap bars. Then, light attack, purifying light. Light attack, puncture and sweeps, 4 times. Then, light attack, beast trap, swap. And that's it. Now, every second rotation, if you need it, apply this. After your spear. If you don't need it, don't apply it at all, just leave it. But every rotation is going to be exactly the same. Spear, light soda barrage, light wall swap, light purifying light, light jabs 4 times, 2, 3, 4, light beast trap swap, start again. That's it. When it comes to execute, spear and wall and swap bars if you want, or you could just have the wall. Spear helps though because it keeps your protection up. And then Jesus Beam 4 times. With a light attack, if you can reach. Once that's done, light beast trap swap, light wall swap back, 4 Jesus Beams. You can repeat that as much as you want while their health is low. Again, if you want the minor protection or you want to make sure that the spears are maintained, you can of course use spear and wall and beams rather than just wall and beams. But whichever one you're more comfortable with. It depends on how low the boss is. It depends on the fight you're in. That's pretty much it. So now it's time for fashion. The important stuff. Got there eventually. So we are using the same as we did before. We're using a Stacy hat in light. We are using Assassin's League heavy chest. Scale Caller light shoulders. Dragon Guard. What is that? That's light gloves. I had to think about that for a moment. Dramafra medium bell. Thieves Guild heavy pants. Those are the ones that look like cargo pants. And of course, silken ring shoes. Now the weapons, of course, are where have they gone? Stacey swords, but when it comes to the staff, I've actually used Abnathan. So the front staff doesn't really matter what you want it to be. I mean, it's up to you. It's your choice. Usually I go Ebon Shadow because they look mega, but the swords are Stacey, so they look like they've got tiny katanas. The colors we're using are very simple. It's just black and red, really, but we've got some shiny ones. So we've got Legate's black for all the black, and we've got Frozen Blood red for the red, which does have a silver tint in some situations. But if you've got the basic stuff, then it's entirely up to you. Just make it look dark with some shiny stuff on it. I'll put this on the website as well, so you can see exactly where all the different colors go, but it's quite basic. Most of my builds actually do look dark. Anyway, hopefully that helped. Hopefully that wasn't too boring. Hopefully you now have a better understanding of how to approach this particular build. If you are struggling with your resources, don't forget to heavy attack with the magical weapon. If you're struggling with your stam resources when it comes to blocking, don't forget to heavy attack with your dual wield if you're using those. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hugely appreciate your support. If you are not subscribing already on YouTube, please, of course, do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside the channel, there are some links in the info section for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, the website xynodegaming.com, and of course, I live stream on Twitch every night except Wednesdays. Once again, thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.